We called the venue and canceled everything, Mom announced triumphantly as she walked into my apartment uninvited, Dad trailing behind her with the same self-satisfied expression he wore whenever he believed he'd fixed a problem. That man isn't right for you, Cassandra. And deep down, you know it. We're saving you from the biggest mistake of your life. Dad added smugly, the deposit's non-refundable, so we saved you money too. You can thank us later. Then why was my phone buzzing with a call from my venue manager? And why did the preview read, Miss Thornton, someone claiming to be your mother just attempted to cancel your event at your own property. Should I contact security? I raised one finger to silence my parents and answered, Rebecca, thank you for notifying me. No, don't call security, but please document everything that was said and who said it. I paused. Also, increase staffing for the wedding by 20%. We may have a few unexpected guests who could try causing problems. I hung up and turned toward my parents, who were exchanging baffled glances. What was that about? Mom demanded. Who's Rebecca? Rebecca is my venue manager at Thornwood Estate, the venue you just attempted to cancel. I smiled, a cold expression I'd mastered from years of dealing with difficult investors. The property I've owned for 3 years. You tried to cancel my wedding at my estate. The color drained from their faces. I had been the family disappointment for as long as I could remember. Not because I failed, but because I succeeded incorrectly. The Thornton family measured success by a single metric: prestige over prosperity, appearance over accomplishment. My older sister Helena married a senator's son. My brother Marcus worked at Dad's law firm. They followed the path laid out for them: right schools, right connections, right marriages. I chose differently. Instead of law school, I studied hospitality management and real estate. Instead of marrying into wealth, I built my own. By 26, I flipped my first property. By 30, I owned 4 boutique hotels. By 33, I acquired Thornwood Estate, a historic 200-acre property I transformed into one of the most in-demand wedding venues on the East Coast. My parents had no idea. Not because I failed to tell them, because I stopped trying. I shared nothing with people who only criticized. When I mentioned my first hotel acquisition, Mom asked when I'd get a real job. When I showed Dad the magazine featuring my second property, he changed the subject to Marcus's latest case. Eventually, I stopped offering information. They assumed I was struggling. I let them. My struggling built a $140 million portfolio while my siblings still paid student loans and lived in homes financed by our parents. But that truth didn't match the story they'd created, so they simply ignored anything that contradicted it. Then I met Jonathan, and everything shifted. Jonathan Rivera was a high school teacher from Queens. Not a lawyer, banker, or the son of someone important, just a man who taught AP history, coached the debate team, and volunteered at a literacy nonprofit on weekends. He drove a 10-year-old Civic, lived in a modest apartment, and had never owned a suit worth more than $200. He was also the kindest, funniest, most genuine person I had ever met. We met at a charity gala, one of the few I attended each year. He was representing the literacy nonprofit, uncomfortable in a borrowed tuxedo, while I was escaping a dull conversation with the real estate developer who wouldn't take a hint. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, I said, joining him at the bar. Is it that obvious? He laughed, loosening his tie. I'm supposed to shake hands and ask for donations, but I'm terrible at it. I keep wanting to talk to people instead of networking with them. What would you talk about right now? I asked. Probably how surreal it is that people are drinking champagne that cost more than my monthly grocery budget while standing next to swan-shaped ice sculptures. He grinned. I'm Jonathan, by the way. I teach history, which is why I've noticed these swan sculptures are anatomically inaccurate. I'm Cassandra, and I'd love to hear more about historically accurate swan anatomy. We talked for 3 hours that night. Then he asked for my number. Not for networking, but simply because he wanted to see me again. When I told him I worked in real estate, he asked if I enjoyed it. Not how much I earned, not what I owned, just whether I was happy. I fell in love with him before our second date. Introducing Jonathan to my family was a mistake made from misplaced optimism. A teacher, Mom repeated, as if I'd said he was a carnival worker from Queens. He's brilliant, Mom. He has a master's in education and he's dedicated to his students. She looked unimpressed. But what does he bring to the table? What connections? What family? He brings kindness, integrity. He makes me laugh every day. Cassandra, be practical. You're not getting younger. If you insist on marrying beneath your station, at least choose someone who can support you. I can support myself. Doing what? Flipping those little houses? She waved her hand dismissively. Sweetie, that's not a career. It's a hobby that hasn't failed yet. I ended the lunch early and didn't speak to her again for 3 months. When Jonathan proposed in a tiny Italian restaurant in Queens with a ring he spent a year saving for, I said yes without hesitation. I didn't tell my family for 2 weeks. When I finally did, their reaction was predictably awful. You're making a mistake, Dad said. This man has nothing to offer you. He offers me everything that matters. You're being naive. When the romance fades and you're stuck with someone who can't provide, I don't need him to provide, Dad. I provide for myself, very successfully. Right. His tone made it clear how little he believed me. Well, when this falls apart, don't come running to us. I wouldn't dream of it. Thornwood Estate was my masterpiece. I acquired it 5 years ago, a decaying historic property in foreclosure for a decade. The main house dated to 1890, original woodwork, stained glass, gardens once featured in architectural magazines. It took 3 years and $8 million to restore it to its former glory. Now it hosted 40 weddings a year at an average price of $150,000 each. The waitlist was 18 months long. Brides flew in from Europe and Asia to marry in the Rose Garden or restored ballroom. When Jonathan and I started planning our wedding, the venue was a given. Are you sure? He asked gently. I don't want our wedding to feel like a work event. It's not just work, Jonathan. It's what I'm most proud of. I want to share that with you. I want to get married in the place I built. Then that's exactly what we'll do. We planned everything ourselves. No wedding planner, no family influence, no expectations but our own. A late September date, gardens at peak bloom, 200 guests, mostly friends, a few business contacts, and my siblings only because excluding them would cause more issues than it solved. My parents received invitations too. I never expected them to attend. I certainly never expected them to try canceling the entire wedding. What do you mean your own estate? Dad demanded. That venue cost $200,000. We checked. You couldn't possibly afford to rent it? No, that's why I bought it 5 years ago, along with the 4 hotels I own and the development company I run. I folded my arms. Did either of you ever ask about my actual career, or did you assume I was failing because that was easier to believe? Mom's face shifted from pale to red. This is absurd. You're lying. You're a house flipper. You always have been. I was a flipper, Mom. Then I became a developer. Then a hotelier. Then an investor. My portfolio is worth $140 million. I've been featured in Forbes, Hotel Management Magazine, and Architectural Digest. I pulled up articles on my phone and handed them to them. But you wouldn't know because you never listened long enough to learn. Dad snatched the phone, scrolling faster and faster, panic rising in his eyes. This can't be right. Marcus would have told us. Marcus doesn't know either. I stopped sharing my wins with people who only wanted to see me lose. Silence stretched. Finally, Mom spoke, voice smaller than I'd ever heard. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. For years, I tried. Every time I mentioned an accomplishment, you shifted the conversation to Helena's charity board or Marcus's cases. Anytime I talked about my work, you called it a hobby. Eventually, I realized you didn't want to know. You had already decided who I was, and nothing I did would change that. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You just tried to cancel my wedding because you decided my fiancé wasn't good enough. You never asked about his character, his values, or whether he makes me happy. You just saw a teacher from Queens and assumed he was beneath me, just like you assumed I was beneath my siblings because I didn't follow your predetermined path. Dad set the phone down. His expression shifted, defensive, softening into something I couldn't read. Cassandra, we were trying to protect you. From what? From happiness? From a man who loves me exactly as I am? From a life I built with my own hands without any help from either of you? From making a mistake. The only mistake would be listening to you. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave. And think very carefully about whether you even want to attend a wedding you just tried to sabotage. Because if you show up and cause problems, security will escort you out. My security. On my property. They left without another word. Jonathan found me crying on the couch an hour later. Hey. He wrapped his arms around me. What happened? Rebecca said something about your parents trying to cancel. I told him everything. The attempted cancellation, the confrontation, the years of dismissal finally breaking open. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, he said softly. I'm sorry they treated you that way. I'm sorry they can't see how incredible you are. They see what they want to see. Then they're missing out. Because the woman I'm marrying is brilliant and kind and built something from nothing. And I'd be proud of you if you owned 50 properties or none. You know that, right? I know. I leaned into him. That's why I'm marrying you. Should we uninvite them? I considered it. Really considered it. No. I want them there. Not for approval, but so they can finally see what I've built. The man I chose. The life I created. I want them sitting in my gardens, in my ballroom, realizing exactly how wrong they were. Jonathan smiled. That sounds very healthy, and not at all like revenge. Maybe a little like revenge. I fully support revenge, especially when it comes with excellent catering. The wedding was 3 weeks later. My parents attended, subdued, unsure, quiet. I had Rebecca seat them near the back with distant cousins and business acquaintances. They didn't protest. The ceremony was held in the rose garden at sunset. Jonathan cried when he saw me. I cried when I saw him crying. Our friend Marcus, not my brother, another Marcus, thankfully, officiated, speaking about finding love in unexpected places. Love doesn't care about your plans. It arrives when it wants to, often disguised as someone your spreadsheet says is wrong. Cassandra and Jonathan found each other at a party neither wanted to attend, bonded over ice sculpture anatomy, and built something real in a world obsessed with appearances. I noticed my mother wiping away tears. I didn't know how to feel about that. The reception took place in the restored ballroom, the same room where I had once stood knee-deep in debris, imagining what it could become. Now it glowed with candlelight and laughter, filled with people who supported us, believed in us, and chose to celebrate us. During toasts, my sister Helena stood without warning. I know I'm not on the list, but I hope Cassandra will let me speak. I nodded, cautious but open. Growing up, I thought I was the successful one, the one who did everything right. But seeing this room, this property, and the man my sister chose, Helena's voice shook. I realized I had it backwards. Cassandra didn't fail our family's path. She succeeded in creating her own. And I'm ashamed it took me this long to see it. She raised her glass. To Cassandra and Jonathan, may your marriage be as strong as the woman who built this place from ruins.
The room applauded. I found myself crying again. My parents approached during dancing. Dad spoke first, voice halting. Cassandra, what Helena said, she was right. We were wrong about everything. Yes, you were. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know we haven't earned that. But I want you to know that I see it now. What you've built, who you've become. He looked around the ballroom at the intricate restoration work, the period-appropriate fixtures, the seamless blend of history with modernity. This is extraordinary. Thank you. And Jonathan, Dad turned to my husband, who had appeared beside me with champagne, I misjudged you. I saw your job title and your address and assumed I knew who you were. That was wrong. Any man who makes my daughter this happy is exactly who she should have married. Jonathan accepted the handshake Dad offered. Thank you, sir. I know this has been a difficult day for you. Less difficult than we deserve. Mom stepped forward, tears streaking her makeup. Cassandra, I'm so sorry. For the venue thing, for the years of not seeing you. I was so focused on the life I thought you should want that I never asked what you actually wanted. No, you didn't. Can we try again? Start over? I looked at the woman who dismissed me for 33 years, who tried to sabotage my wedding 3 weeks earlier, and who was now asking for a fresh start she hadn't earned. We can try, I said carefully. But starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means rebuilding slowly with proof, not promises. That's more than fair. And if you ever interfere in my life again, that's it. No more chances. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Jonathan squeezed my hand. I think the DJ's about to play our song. I let him lead me to the dance floor, leaving my parents at the edge of the ballroom, watching their daughter spin through a room she rebuilt with her own hands, in the arms of a man they once called unworthy. The article in Wedding magazine ran 3 months later. Thornwood estate owner weds in her own ballroom, the headline read. The photos were gorgeous. Gardens in autumn color, the candlelit reception, Jonathan and me laughing in the rose garden. The journalist asked about the venue's history, and I told her the restoration story. What I didn't tell her was the family drama that nearly overshadowed the day. Some stories are for magazines, some are just for me. But the ending was the same. Either way, I built something beautiful. I married someone wonderful, and I did it all without anyone's help, permission, or approval. My parents are trying, genuinely trying to rebuild our relationship. We have monthly dinners now. They ask about the business. They've even visited 2 of my hotels, walking through lobbies with expressions of wonder I'd never seen before. We had no idea, Mom keeps saying. We had absolutely no idea. I know, I always reply. That was the problem. But we're working on it. Slowly, carefully, with proof, not promises. And every September, when another bride walks down the aisle in my rose garden, I remember my own wedding. The confrontation before, the celebration after, the moment when everything I built finally became visible to the people who refused to see it. I didn't need their validation. I never had.
But there was something satisfying in receiving it anyway, on my terms, in my space, surrounded by evidence they could neither dismiss nor ignore. Some victories are quiet. Some are very, very loud. Mine was both. They tried to cancel my wedding because they thought they knew better. They didn't know the venue was mine. They didn't know anything about my life because they never cared enough to ask. But now they know. Now they see. Not because I needed them to. I stopped needing that years ago. But because seeing is believing, and belief is the first step toward change. They're changing. Slowly. And I'm building still. Properties, partnerships, a marriage, a future. All of it mine. All of it exactly what I want.